coming from the Cronus console. I have the full definition now. That one's always hard for me to remember, but it stands for Communication Radio Frequency Onboard Network Utilization Specialist. So you can't blame me if I can't spat it out right away. But yes, our team members at that console are providing us great views of Dragon and usually do such a great job.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is go for approach 0 and we'll be enabling the maneuver shortly. Expected approach 0 start at 204530 Zulu.
Freedom copies 204530 Zulu, and we see the flag.
All right, so a little bit about this mission. You know, we have what most people are familiar with is the idea of a mission patch. These have gone back generations. But if you don't know how they come to exist, for decades now, crew members have worked together to develop the patch for their mission, and they determine what aspects of the mission they want to highlight and any special details they'd like to include. Now, the crew themselves can design their patch, or they can share their design ideas with an artist who make it come to life.
The Crew-9 mission patch, which you have a great view of on your screen right now, depicts the trail of a rocket launching en route to the International Space Station, which will be home for long-duration expedition dedicated to service, science, and collaboration.
Coastal waves are inspired by the historic Florida launch site and on a larger scale represent our blue planet, the global ocean, which you get a live view of right now, connecting all the continents.
And then a falcon with the number 9 as its beak and a crescent moon as its eye is a nod to the Falcon 9 rocket, while the constellation Draco honors the Dragon spacecraft that is taking Crew-9 to their destination and that we are watching
Hello
live
guys,
from
thanks for
space
watching.
right now.
Welcome.
The Delta symbol, which was first used in 1961,
We are
evokes
watching
historic
live
ties to
images,
the earliest days of space endeavors.
From the Dragon spacecraft approaching
Human exploration of space is
ISS,
built on international
Space
collaboration
Station.
and depends on the support
We're
of
about to
multitudes
dock in
across
about
the globe whose efforts
an hour
honor
or
that
so.
heritage.
Less than
I
an
love
hour.
mission patches. I love looking
So we're
back
gonna continue
at some of my favorites, but I love
monitoring
the colors in this one. It's
this
definitely been a favorite.
beautiful approach.
So yesterday we saw a look at the zero-G indicator, which is always a surprise for us too. I had no idea what
Thanks
to
for watching. Don't
expect.
forget to like, share, and comment below.
It was a small
Let us know where you're watching
Falcon
from.
Flush that had been to space before. We heard Nick Hague talking about it, the commander. It flew with he and Alexeyev-Chinin on their Soyuz flight to the station in 2019. And what I wanted to mention earlier was Alexeyev-Chinin is also on the space station right now. So they're doing a reunion in space. It'll be he, Nick Hague, and this Falcon Flush. And they've now arrived on 2 different spacecraft this time, but back together in space.
How's the
I love
audio?
those testaments to really like
Let me
the
know
human
how the audio
nature
is.
behind human spaceflight.
Let me know in
whether
the
it's
chat.
mission patch or the zero-G indicator.
Can you hear me
and of
good?
course, it should
Me
be a good
okay?
reunion for that team when they finally get on board the ISS.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, still getting great views of
Great
Dragon
views
as it
out of the
continues
Dragon
its approach
spacecraft.
to the International Space Station.
Flying
It
over
looks
the
like the next major milestone will be the go, no-go to approach
Right now they are
waypoint
over
1,
the
so
Pacific
expecting that
Ocean.
in just a couple of minutes.
They're going to approach
We've
the
had a
west
couple
coast of the
great
US.
burns, or I should say successful burns, keeping us on track with the station this
They're
morning.
flying over Hawaii right
Again,
now.
though,
I'm
looking
approaching
to
Hawaii
move
from the south.
to waypoint 1
Gonna cross
in just
over
a couple of minutes.
California,
So standing by for
across
those
the,
calls.
Canada, and then over the Atlantic Ocean. As you can see in the map there, I don't know if you can see here, right there on the left side of the screen there, you can see the International Space
The
Station.
zoom out we're getting on Dragon
The
right
zoom
now is
out
really
now
putting
for
in
the camera.
perspective the size of the capsule
Let me know how the
relative
audio
to
is.
the Earth
If you
behind it.
guys can hear me okay. It's
Absolutely.
too
We
loud.
zoomed in so close.
How's
and
my,
that's-
how's
it's
my
a
audio?
testament
Is
how
it-
good
is
the
it too
cameras are
loud?
outside the
Oh,
space
yeah.
station too. You could see every little detail almost, and they're still pretty far away. So they've not quite reached waypoint 0 yet. We're going to be waiting for that go no go for waypoint 1, as I just mentioned, in just a couple of minutes.
Happy
But
Sunday,
they are still
everyone.
a little
Thanks
bit
for
away
watching.
From the space station, again, they'll be swinging up and out in front. So pretty soon we will lose those views of Earth behind Dragon as it becomes out in front of the space station.
So we have to enjoy them now while we have them.
Yes.
All that being said, Dragon is still really moving pretty fast as it approaches the station. Just a couple of minutes ago, we heard the call out from Mission Control that they were about 1,000 meters away. And again, waypoint 0 is just 400 meters away. So we're moving pretty quickly considering how big Dragon and the ISS both are.
We are now, again, both Dragon and the International Space Station traveling about 260 miles above Earth. So let's see if I can pull up our trajectory or our map again. It looks like they are flying just over Kiribati. So that is in the Pacific Ocean. And they'll be moving south of Hawaii soon. But you can actually spot the International Space Station with your naked eye. I love being able to look up, and I wave at them every time. I know they can't see me. I'm not even a speck to them from the International Space Station, but we do have an amazing app called Spot the Station where you can plug in your location and you can get almost real-time updates, or actually you can get real-time updates of when they will be flying overhead and where to locate them. There's now kind of a trajectory path. It'll help you by using your camera and it'll align with the space station so you know exactly where to look. But it's hard to miss once you're outside because I believe it is the second brightest object in the night sky, only second to the moon itself.
I'm always impressed when I see the ISS go over. It is much brighter than you would expect it to be, so there's no mistaking it for a plane or anything like that. And obviously the Spot the Station app is really helpful in making sure that you don't miss it when you can see it.
Truly, it is unmistakable. Once you see it coming over the horizon, you're
below
like,
the
that is
International
definitely
Space
it.
Station.
And
They're flying over the
reason
Pacific
you can
Ocean
see
right
it so
now.
well is because of the size of the solar arrays on it. So you can only see it in dusk and dawn when it is dark outside, but the sun is still reflecting on those solar arrays.
North
so it is
America,
just like a bright, beautiful star coming across
California,
the sky. And like you mentioned,
Canada,
there's no blinking light on it.
and then
So
we're
when
across
you see
the
it, you
Atlantic.
know it's not a plane. This is
Africa,
where we will
and then
have,
Pacific
once these
again.
two arrive today, we will have 11 people living and working aboard the station.
Beautiful view. If you're watching here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Then let us know where you're watching from. Let's see the speed of the spacecraft right now at 17,000 miles per hour at an altitude of 256 miles above Earth.
Now, again, just a recap of where we've been so far. Yesterday, we launched on time at 10:17 a.m. Pacific time, and about 45 minutes after liftoff at 11:03 a.m. Pacific, Dragon executed the phase burn. That was the first of 5 major burns required to raise Dragon's orbit and position it for approach to the International Space Station. Dragon raised its orbit using those Draco thrusters over the last several hours as it chases down its destination.
And then shortly after that, the boost burn took place at 7:58 p.m. Pacific. The boost burn put our crew in an orbit where Dragon's apogee, or the highest point, was about 10 kilometers lower than the station. But before we can approach the space station, we need Dragon's entire orbit, not just that highest point, to be effectively shadowing the space station. So after that,
hello,
we
Mark.
executed
Thanks for
the
watching.
close
Hello,
co-elliptic
Maria.
burn at 8:42 p.m. Pacific. The close burn placed
Thanks for the
Dragon
like.
on an orbit roughly co-elliptic
Thanks
with
for
the
the
space station.
subscribe,
meaning
Mario.
It was maintaining
Thank you.
an orbit
Welcome to our
roughly
channel.
10 kilometers lower than the station, or roughly 6 miles, the entire way around the Earth. Again, that's in contrast to only being 10 kilometers lower than the station during Dragon's apogee, or the highest point in its orbit, which was achieved by that previous boost burn.
From there, this morning at 7:54 a.m. Pacific, we executed the 4th major maneuver known as the transfer burn. That's where we raised Dragon's apogee, or the highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers lower than the station. Then we conducted the final co-elliptic burn at 8:41 a.m. Pacific to once again maintain a constant orbit lower than the station all the way around. Again, that time just 2.5 kilometers below. That burn lasted just over 30 seconds. We also added in the approach out of plane burn at 11:30 a.m. Pacific to further refine Dragon's trajectory to the space station.
During this approach, SpaceX flight controllers will work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to maneuver Dragon Freedom to the proper altitude. And we've already heard a lot of conversation back and forth between both teams on the nets already. Together, they'll initialize the navigation sensors used for this methodical approach to station. They'll also activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including bidirectional communications with the station
Thanks
using
for watching.
the C2V2 system.
Don't forget to
C2V2
like and
stands for Common
share and
Communications
subscribe
for
to our
Visiting
channel if you haven't done
Vehicles,
that
and it
yet.
sets up a data stream from Dragon
We're
to
about
the
to,
station, giving us another
gonna,
path for Dragon telemetry to come
watch
to the
this
ground and
docking
giving an additional
procedure
command
from the
capability to
Dragon
astronauts aboard the
spacecraft.
station.
At approximately 1:01 p.m. Pacific, we saw Dragon fire the approach initiation burn when we were about 2.5 kilometers below the station and about 7 kilometers behind it. That is swinging Dragon up until it's about a quarter mile directly below the station. That's also moving Dragon inside the approach ellipsoid. So we did hear a confirmation of that shortly earlier. That's also called the AE, an imaginary shape measuring 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers and essentially a large three-dimensional oval. The capsule was considered to be on what we call a 24-hour safe trajectory. That means if Dragon somehow lost control to all its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its trajectory would move inside the approach ellipsoid.
Next
Who
up,
else
we're
is in the
standing
chat?
by
Say
to
hi
hear
to
the
us.
NASA and SpaceX teams do a go, no-go poll to move Dragon inside of the keep-out sphere, another checkpoint that consists of an imaginary sphere around the station, this time with a radius of just 200 meters. Flight controllers use this to monitor all arriving and departing vehicles. This is another chance to confirm that all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly
the right, you have
on
the camera.
Dragon before moving closer to station. Great views now on your screen.
That was
of
showing the
Dragon,
International
both
Space
outside the
Station. Now it's
capsule
inside
and
of the
capsule as we are looking
inside
over
of
the
the
shoulder
capsule
of our
right
two
right now.
Crew-9 members on board Dragon. The keep-out sphere carries a similar requirement to the approach ellipsoid that if Dragon were to somehow lose control of its thrusters,
this spacecraft is fully automated,
for
right?
4 orbits, or about 6 hours,
not much the
rather than the
astronauts can
24 hours required
do.
to
It's
enter
just
the
they
approach
just
ellipsoid.
monitor the
Once
instruments.
Dragon arrives at 400 meters below
The whole
the
thing
station,
is
it will
fully
be at what is
automated,
known
and
as waypoint 0,
they can
and we're
take
standing
control
by for that
manually if they need
confirmation
to
now.
in case of
That's
emergency.
our first
But
checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can
nothing
either
goes
hold
wrong.
there at 400
just
meters, but if all of its
sit
systems
and
check
enjoy
out,
the
it
ride.
can also
That's it.
continue on its approach to waypoint 1.
And I just got an update as you were saying that we are now in waypoint 0. So now that we are here, we will move up to waypoint 1. That'll swing Dragon up and out in front of the station, arriving at a distance of approximately 220 meters. That'll put us on the docking axis, so that means we'll be directly in front of the docking port. And again, we're going to node 2 forward. That is the forwardmost port on station. Dragon is always docked to node 2, also known as Harmony, because that is where the IDAs are, or the International Docking Adapters, and that is for all of these commercial spacecraft flights, as well as any futures.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, approach 0 has started and trajectory converged on waypoint 1. Expect arrival at waypoint 1 at 2110.
Copies. Arrival at 2001.
All right, confirmation from the Corps, the Crew Operations and Resource Engineer here in Hawthorne, to the crew aboard Dragon that they are indeed now at waypoint 0 and will begin moving up to waypoint 1.
And Dragon, that our waypoint 1 arrival time is 2110.
2110.
All right, confirmation. We did just reach the waypoint 0 milestone, and we are now heading up to waypoint 1. We'll be swinging out and in front of the space station, so enjoy those views of Dragon with Earth behind it, because we will soon be losing those, as we will see Dragon with space behind it, bringing it out in front of the International Space Station. And it sounds like we can expect that arrival in about 22 minutes at waypoint 1. So to give us a little more of insight of what's happening on the space station side of things, I'm going to toss it over to my colleague, Gary Jordan in Houston. Gary, how's it going?
Hey Leah, going great. We're following along with the operations, same as you, all along the way. Great to see that approach 0 initiation has been executed. This is when Dragon is 400 meters immediately below the International Space Station, and as you said, is going to swing out and up in front. So yes, we're definitely enjoying the same views that you are over there in Hawthorne. Now, aboard the International Space Station, Matt Dominic and Mike Barrett are in the cupola, watching and getting these incredible views that we're seeing now, but they have the backup capabilities and a connection with the Dragon to execute any abort abilities. But right now, they're just monitoring. Everything looking fantastic aboard the Dragon, and its approach to the International Space Station happening per the timeline. And we're expecting a docking time around the expected time at this hour, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. Now, as the Dragon swings up and around in front of the International Space Station, we can confirm that the space station itself is in the docking attitude. Thrusters have been moved over to the Russian thrusters, and the attitude is in an expected configuration optimal for the docking of Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov to the International Space Station, which you're seeing there on the screen to your right. And of course, seeing once the Dragon moves in front of the docking axis, that waypoint 1 is right outside an area that's called the Keep Out Sphere. Now, outside of that, you're hearing these go, no-go polls, and we're providing updates of the joint teams that are working together to make sure that the crew is safely approaching the International Space Station, and all requirements are being passed before proceeding to go to the next milestone. That milestone of waypoint 1 is just outside the Keep Out Sphere. Once we're inside the Keep Out Sphere, which is about 180 meters away from the International Space Station from the docking axis, then we're in a new set of flight rules. We'll plan to pause at about the waypoint 2 marker. This is just about 20 meters in front of the docking axis. If everything looks good, it'll just be a short changeover in the mode to enable the final approach for contact and capture with the forward port of the International Space Station. From there, we'll say farewell to our colleagues over in, that you are covering over there in Hawthorne, in SpaceX Mission Control with Leah and Ronnie, and we'll take coverage here in Mission Control Houston to oversee the hatch opening and welcome ceremony operations. There's a few hatches on board the International Space Station that we need to pass. There's the Dragon hatch itself, of course, but there's also an 8-pass hatch that's on the other side of that hatch, as well as the Node 2 hatch. 3 hatches to get through until the 2 crew members aboard Crew-9 can be welcomed by the 9 crew members aboard the International Space Station. But as mentioned, the International Space Station is in the right configuration. The docking configuration, and will remain as such. The view that you're seeing on your screen where the space station is pointed, it will remain pointed in that position. You can see the solar arrays that are sort of the wings from this
Hello, Toast.
perspective
Thanks for watching.
of
How are you
the,
doing?
Crew-9 Dragon Freedom vehicle. Those solar alpha rotary joints that
Right, they
control the solar arrays on the International Space
the International Space Station
come
and the
to
Dragon
front. And they'll be in
spacecraft
that
is already
position
over
to avoid any
United
uninterrupted
States
communication
right
and
now,
maximize
passing
our teachers'
over
coverage
California,
views and the beautiful
near
views we're
the
getting
border
from the
of
station, as
Canada,
well as the
close
Crew-9
to
Dragon,
Vancouver.
and minimize any interference.
It's gonna
with any of
cross the whole
thrusters that are
continent.
on board. Now, in these the dual view, you'll see the
Thanks for watching.
views from the station and the Dragon get incrementally interrupted.
Guys, if you're watching here for the first
as
time,
expected, as
don't forget
both
to
vehicles are
subscribe to our
traveling
channel.
17,500
We're gonna
miles per hour.
watch this full event today. That's gonna happen today. Is the
Dragon
docking
cabin views are
of the
enabled
Dragon
by ground
spacecraft
stations
with the
positioned
International Space
strategically
Station
around
with the
the
2
Earth. So we'll be
astronauts.
we'll be sharing some of the views from inside the
And
Dragon
the
cabin
greetings
as we get them.
and the
as they are
hatch
beautiful
opening.
views, and it's wonderful to see over the shoulders of Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov.
Yes, over Vancouver. They're
views
crossing
of
the
from
near
International
Vancouver.
Space Station that we're seeing now as Crew-9 Dragon passes over the Earth are covered by the tracking data and relay satellites.
Now it's flying over Canada.
These are satellites that are positioned in a geosynchronous
You can see it here on the
orbit,
map on the left.
approximately 23,000
You
miles
see the map
from
here?
the Earth, whereas the vehicles we're seeing now are approximately
So that's
250 miles.
right here, right there,
Now you see we'll be
right there.
having some
There's
intermittent
the
loss
position
of
of
that
the
video coverage. That's
International
expected.
Space Station
As we
right
orbit
now.
the Earth, the antennas will be hopping from one of the TDRS
On the west
satellites
coast of
to the other, and we'll be
North
providing as
America,
much coverage
right?
as we can.
West coast of the
For
U.S.
docking
Flying
operations,
north,
we do make
northeast.
sure that our
It's gonna enter
Ku
Canada
band
right now,
frequency capabilities
and then
to
fly over
provide the
Canada,
beautiful video that we see
over the
is
Great Lakes,
maximized. But it will be
crossing
we will
the
have incremental loss, and so we're
Canada,
experiencing that now
and
as we
exiting
continue
to
the
the
ground
east.
station
We're
coverage
gonna
from the
cross the
Dragon itself,
Atlantic and then
providing
fly
these views of the
over
International Space
Africa,
Station.
the west coast of Africa. This
As
camera
Dragon
here is
swings out and up in front of the
from the
International
Dragon
Space Station,
spacecraft.
we're starting to get views of that zenith port, where the other Crew Dragon
right. This is the Dragon
is,
camera,
docked.
Dragon flight
That's
camera.
Dragon Endeavour docked to the zenith port of the International Space Station. The Crew 8
Oh, you live next to
astronauts
Vancouver, right?
on
Nice.
board
Yeah, so
will
it's
be
just
welcoming
went up above your head
Dragon
now.
Alexander Gorbachev.
Close to it, not
Earth
really above
soon
it, but
after
really close.
docking.
On the next pass,
They'll begin
on the next
a
pass,
7-day handover
that's gonna
period
happen in a
until
few
they
hours,
undock at
right?
approximately,
It's gonna pass right over
October
Vancouver.
is the date that we're currently tracking for the earliest opportunity for
So
Crew
right
8
now,
to
I think it
undock
passed over San
and
Francisco
splash
Bay
down off the
Area,
coast of
and then on the
Florida,
next pass, it's
returning
gonna fly a
four
little bit
astronauts
north,
home and
and then it's gonna fly right over Vancouver.
Freedom
You're not gonna be able to
on
see
the
it because in
loop.
the daytime
We're
you
going
don't
to
see
be
it, but
demanding an increase to our C2V2 rate. We'll have a temporary drop in C2V2 return from Dragon for a little bit.
Freedom copies.
C2V2 is the common communication for visiting vehicles. The vehicles you're seeing now are not too far away, about 320 meters away from each other, just outside the keep-out sphere and swinging out and up in front of the station. Now, we talked about TDRS coverage and ground station coverage, but there is a link that allows the two vehicles to talk to one another. That's through a system called the Common Communication for Visiting Vehicles, C2V2. On board the International Space Station, NASA astronauts Matt Dominic and Mike Barrett are currently inside the
so
cupola,
those
getting
two
some beautiful
astronauts
views
gonna
of
stay in
Dragon,
space for
making its
6
approach
months,
to the International Space Station, but they're
and the
also
Crew 8
receiving
is gonna
data
come back to
through this
Earth.
common communication link.
Look at that
So the
amazing
data they're
view,
seeing of
view
range,
from the
range
International
rate,
Space
and
Station.
vehicle status and health are all being transmitted from the Dragon to the International Space Station. Status of that link will be provided over the Dragon to ground and its big loops, Dragon to ground loops and big loops, as we make our way around the Earth and continue with our coverage of the approach and docking.
Beautiful view, right?
We're now over the continental United States, about 260 statute miles.
Yeah, the altitude of the
Over the
spacecraft
northern
now 260
continental United States,
miles.
getting some great
Speed
views
at
as
17,155
Dragon makes its way
miles per
towards
hour.
the docking axis station and Dragon, almost directly over the northern border of North Dakota.
Yeah, North Dakota, approaching Canada, crossing
Getting
into
views
Canada.
in the distant southern Canadian landscape.
Yeah, that's right.
You can see Dragon moving.
Yeah, I think on
towards
the
the
next pass,
from this view.
Toast, it's gonna fly right
These
over
views provided
Vancouver.
by the external
Right over the
cameras
bay.
that are mounted on the outside of the International Space Station.
Oh yeah, that's the speed they need to maintain, right? To keep the orbit, right? 17,000 miles per hour in order to
And focus and
maintain the
aperture
orbit, right?
being controlled by flight controllers here on the ground. In fact, here in the room with me at Mission Control Houston.
But if
Positions
they fly a
for
little bit
Cronus.
slower, the gravity
have
is
autonomous
gonna
control
pull,
of the
right, the spacecraft back to
Cameras
Earth.
on the outside,
Or if they
we're able
fly a
to
little
use
bit
the
faster,
pan, tilt,
then they're
and
gonna
zoom
exit
functions of the
the
external cameras to
Earth
provide us great
orbit,
views.
right? So they have to maintain that perfect speed in order for them to keep that orbit forever, right? That forever orbit around the Earth, or around Earth. In a few minutes, everything's gonna be dark, right? Because they're gonna enter the dark side of the planet right now, right? Whereas the sun is setting, right? The sun is gonna set behind them, and then Oh yeah, yeah. That's the trick. That's simple physics, right? That's the speed that they have to maintain in order for them to keep Earth orbit.
We're closing in on 4 p.m.
And if
Central
nothing
Time,
happens,
2
they're gonna
p.m.
stay
over
there
there on the
forever.
Pacific Coast, continuing to track Dragon's approach to the
So how
International
do
Space
return?
Station.
How do they return to Earth? It's easy, right? They burn their
Getting
engines,
some distant views
right?
and some,
Breaking
some
the
of,
spacecraft,
northern Ontario.
slowing down, and then the gravity,
course, the
right? The
horizon of
gravity is gonna
Earth.
start pulling them down, and that's
This
how
view
they
provided
do
from
the re-entry.
External cameras aboard station of Dragon with the nose
So now
cones
they're in a
open,
in a in
forward
a
bulkhead facing the International Space
a
Station.
parabola,
provides
right? It's a
communication link,
parabola
very
that's
strong
it's a
link.
constant
Some of the
parabola
forward
because of the speed.
forward
They are
bulkhead
going
Dracos
so
are now
fast
coming
that the
into view as Dragon
the gravity is not
becomes a little bit closer,
strong enough to bring them back,
just a little
right?
more than 300 meters from the station at this point.
Make sense? Yeah.
Now this
Simple
slow
physics,
trajectory is
right?
moving us up into what's called the docking axis. The docking axis is immediately in front of the space station today. We're heading towards the forward-most port. Dragon Endeavour is currently docked to the
From time to
zenith
time,
port.
from
This is
time
the
to
space
time,
station port.
you're gonna see the screen, the video,
And Endeavour again will undock in approximately 7 days.
going back and forth through that
This allows for
still
a
image.
seamless handover
That's
of
the camera, right?
Crew-9 crew and the Crew-8 crew before their departure.
Beautiful view of the planet
Endeavour
right
is
now.
currently configured with extra seats for Butch.
In a few minutes, gonna
Butch
enter
Wilmore
the
and
dark
Cindy
side of
Williams,
the
both
planet
NASA
now. The
astronauts,
the
who
shading,
are scheduled to return aboard the Crew-9 Dragon.
where the sun is gonna
Those
set
seats
behind
outfitted
them.
for emergency capabilities, just in case. We're not going to be using them though, because the Dragon and Freedom.
Who else is
well
watching
on
here
its
in the
way to
chat on the
International Space
YouTube?
Station with those 2 empty
Let us know in the
seats.
chat where are you watching from.
Upon
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop.
We have Toast from
CTV2 transit rate
Canada
increase
watching.
is complete,
Who else?
so we're back with good comms.
Toast with butter. I love it.
Same copies.
Yeah, beautiful view. Look at that.
C2V2 again, that communications channel that is a link between the Dragon and the International Space Station. Back to a nominal config.
Yeah, Toast from Canada. Who else? Let us know in the chat.
We're now past the top of the hour and approximately 10 minutes
It's
away
out of
from the expected
focus right
arrival
now.
of
They're gonna
waypoint
adjust
1.
that. So now they're gonna fly over Newfoundland, right? In a few minutes. Over Gander, right? They're gonna fly over Gander, St. John's, and then they're gonna cross the Atlantic. I've been
The
to
views
Gander a
we're
couple
seeing
times
from the International
landing
Space Station, illuminating the
on a
console
Citation
of
Sovereign,
Dragon
landing
Freedom
there
Air,
for
covered by the setting sun,
fuel
and whereas we approach an
and
orbital
continue the flight crossing the Atlantic, and then same thing
the station
coming back from Europe
and Dragon Freedom
I
pass
landed
over
there
the western border of
to
Quebec.
get some fuel and then continue the flight to
Terminator line
Florida.
that separates daytime from nighttime is over the Atlantic Ocean. It'll be just a few minutes until the expected sunset, and we'll lose some of the views that we have currently of Dragon Freedom.
Yeah, it's gonna be dark in a few moments.
Now we're getting a flashing light from the center hatch of
Nice view.
the
It's just a little bit
exposed
out of focus
forward
right
bulkhead,
now.
thanks to the open nose cone. But that blinking light is called a docking light. We'll be seeing those views
Yeah, but in a few moments it's gonna be dark.
as we enter into an orbital nighttime.
Yeah, it's gonna be night in a few moments.
We'll see some of the navigation lights lit up. This includes the starboard
In a
light,
24-hour
the
period,
port light,
right?
starboard being green, port being red.
They do 8.
That will show the relative
They can see.
position,
They
orientation, and attitude
circle around the
of
Earth
Dragon
8
as it
times.
makes its approach to the station. Now getting some camera views from inside Dragon Freedom, covered by some of the ground stations strategically positioned around the Earth. On the center console there, you can see the trajectory of Dragon as it approaches waypoint
Everything is automatic.
1. This will be right when it's
They don't do
right in the middle
anything. They
there.
just
but the
monitor
trajectory that you
instruments.
see
They can
that's
do some
curved
checklists,
is
but
part of potential
that's about
breakout
it.
maneuvers.
unless something
be
really
calculated at
major
any
happens,
point
like a mercy or
in
something,
Dragon's
they
approach
can
to the
take
International
control
Space Station
of
to
the
ensure the
spacecraft
safety of
manually.
crew.
But everything is done automatically.
We have passed several go, no-go checkpoints, everything looking healthy aboard Dragon and station.
And every
Ground
minute
teams
that
in
passes,
Houston
right, the
and Hawthorne
spacecraft
in position.
gets closer and closer to the International
Seeing
Space
good
Station,
health on both of the
and
vehicles and milestones with trajectory.
the
Everything's looking
time
good to
of
proceed
docking, it's
past waypoint 1 inside the keep out
it's
sphere.
for, let's see, 4:30 p.m. Central Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So 2:30 p.m. for you, Toast. It's about to get dark now. Thanks, guys, for watching. Let us know where you're watching from. Say hi to us in the chat. Have Canada in the house, USA in the house. Who else?
Axis. Not quite there yet. We're expected to be there
In about 25
6.5
minutes.
So we're right immediately in front of the International Space Station. From there, we'll make
The
a
Dragon
slow and
spacecraft's gonna
methodical
dock with the International
push
Space
in
Station.
towards the docking axis through several waypoints. Waypoint 1 being, of course, meeting at the docking axis immediately in front. Waypoint 2 being inside.
Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, please. Like the live stream. That helps a lot.
Commander Nick Hague in the view from inside.
Hello, Maria. Thanks for the like. Hello, John. Thanks for the subscribe.
Mission
Thanks for the
specialist
follow.
Alexander Gorbanov on the right.
Who else? Who else is in the chat?
Following along on Dragon's approach to waypoint 1 immediately in front.
Nothing happened, Toast. Still the same. It's approaching, right? Every minute that
Sun
passes
ahead
is
of an
getting
orbital
closer and closer.
sunset, illuminating the station's solar arrays.
What is
8
that?
sets
It's a
of
UFO?
legacy arrays
Look at that.
in view.
What is this? It's a UFO. Whoa, look at that. That's, oh, they cut the feed. Oh, it's a UFO. Conspiracy theorist. That was weird, huh? It's just some debris. All right, 25 minutes and counting until docking. And then after docking, it's gonna take about an hour
Inside 5 minutes from the expected
for the
arrival of waypoint
spacecraft to pressurize, right, with the International Space Station and equalize the pressure, and then you're gonna have the hatch opening and the welcoming ceremony, right, where the two astronauts gonna meet with the
The arrival of Dragon to waypoint 1
with the
should
9 crew
coincide
members. There is
almost
right now
exactly
at the International Space
with
Station.
the expected time of an orbital sunset, where we will lose the illumination of
Yeah,
the
that was
entire
weird,
Dragon
right? That piece of
from
debris
the sun.
flying.
If this is the case, right when we hear the call up on the big loop that we have passed waypoint 1 and have begun what's called approach 1, this is the burn that actually allows Dragon to
All right, now it's gonna be
start
dark
moving
soon.
inside the docking axis towards the keep out sphere. We might lose some of the illumination of the spacecraft, in which case you'll see some of the navigation lights, the green and the red lights.
Thanks for the like, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you're here for the first time. Let us know where you're watching from. Say hi to us in the chat. Feel free to ask any question. If I don't know the answer, I'll research and we can discuss. For you guys that don't know me, I'm a real pilot, right? I fly a Falcon 7X. I live in the US. I'm from Brazil. My name is Daniel.
Sunrise is not expected
And I live in
until about
Texas.
4:46 p.m. Central
I'm
Time.
a real pilot. I fly
4:46
for
p.m.
corporate,
Eastern.
right? I fly the
which
Falcon
case,
7X and a CJ4
If we proceed
out
on
of
the
Love
timeline
Field.
as we are now, as
And I
expected,
love
the docking time being
anything related to
just around
space
4:30.
and aviation.
We will be docking during
That's
important
our,
landing time, which does meet the necessary
that's
light
what I love
conditions.
doing. Flying and
For
space and exploration. Look at that, beautiful.
Waypoint 1 arrival.
So docking's gonna
Just a
happen
little more than 2.5 minutes.
while in the dark, right? They're gonna dock while the ISS and the Dragon spacecraft will be in a complete dark on the dark side of the planet, right? I don't fly for any airlines, Toast. I fly corporate.
We're continuing to
Been
follow
flying
along
for 24 years, right?
the journey of
Now.
Commander
Been over
Nick
24
Hague,
years
NASA astronaut,
flying.
and mission specialist
Never flew for the
Alexander
airlines.
Gorbanov was Cosmos cosmonaut on their way to the International
Always
Space
flying
Station
corporate.
from here.
Freedom
in Mission
SpaceX
Control,
on
Houston.
the big loop. Approach 1 and soft capturing extension will begin shortly. Dragon will continue approach to waypoint 2.
Okay, now the spacecraft is approaching the islands of Azores, right?
That call from the ground
Portugal.
confirms that all teams are go to proceed past waypoint 1. There will be no
Santa
stopping
Maria,
at the waypoint 1.
Azores
Dragon will
Island.
execute its approach 1 maneuver burn.
Then it's gonna
and
cross
have a
over the
go to enter inside the
Canaries,
keep-out sphere. This is
Canaries
the
Island.
180 mark. Waypoint 2
On
though,
the
is just 20 meters in
just
front
off
of
the
docking
coast of
access. We'll be
Africa,
proceeding
and then it's
in
gonna cross over
very
Africa,
shortly. All
South
teams are go,
Africa,
everything looking good.
and then the
Here
South
in the International
Indian
Space
Ocean,
Station
and then
flight control room
above
in Houston, Texas.
Australia,
With that, as
and
we
then
continue to follow along,
enters the
I'll toss it back to my colleagues,
Pacific
Oprah
Ocean
and
again.
Hawthorne, Leah and Ronnie, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. So one of the things that's really interesting as we
All right, 20
move,
minutes
up to
to
waypoint
docking.
1 is that in a lot of ways
20
the
minutes.
trajectory we're on today, even though we've done these additional burns with Dragon's Draco thrusters, was set yesterday when we lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40. And that's part of the reason that we had an instantaneous launch window yesterday. A lot of that is driven by this rendezvous point between Dragon
Yeah.
and the International Space Station in orbit, so that we can perform all of these maneuvers moving from waypoint 1 to waypoint 2, coming up here shortly, exactly on time and through this careful, very methodical approach between all of the teams currently participating. Here at SpaceX Hawthorne, obviously our crew on board Dragon, the International Space Station, and Mission Control in Houston. We are still expecting initial contact between Dragon and the International Space Station at about 2:30 p.m. Pacific time or 5:30
Thank you guys if
p.m.
you're watching here for
Eastern
the first
time.
time. Don't forget to subscribe and
And
like.
before reaching waypoint 1, which again is coming up here very shortly, mission operators
We're about to
conducted
reach
a go,
our
no-go poll,
8,000
which we just heard, to allow Dragon to begin its approach to
subscribers
waypoint
mark.
2.
We're almost
That's,
there.
of course,
We need
located
your help.
inside of the keep-out sphere,
Hit the
about
subscribe.
20 meters away from the space station.
I also
Again,
fly a
like you
Cessna
said, Ronnie,
182 that I have.
to arrive at waypoint 1.
And I
However,
post
we do
videos
hear
of
the
the,
call that we will
that
not be
aircraft as
stopping
well.
at waypoint 1 today. There's always the option there if we wanted to stop at waypoint 1, and that brings us up and in front of the International Space Station, puts us on the docking axis, meaning we are right in front of Node 2, which is our docking port today, also known as Harmony. We actually had a really cool view earlier when we had that shot from Dragon where you could see Crew-9's Dragon at the zenith or space-facing port of Harmony. So hopefully, as we get closer, we get that view back. But once we get to waypoint 1, like you mentioned, we will start
No, the
moving
first
into
plane that
waypoint 2.
that
And
I
if you look
flew.
on the left of your screen, you can see Dragon
Oh, that
changing color.
it's getting
just a little
dark
bit.
now. See the
That
color?
was,
Yeah.
an orbital, let's see, sunrise. That was the delayed view of an orbital sunset. So they are now in an orbital nighttime, flying about 260 statute miles.
So the first
over
the
Atlantic
aircraft that I
Ocean
first flew
to
was
be
the
crossing over
Alpha
Africa
Bravo
soon.
115,
And if you see those
115. You can
colorful dots
search
on your
that on
screen,
Google. You
not the
can
ones on
Google it.
Dragon, but
Google
all those other little
Alpha
specks,
Bravo
that is
115.
due to
It's Aerobuero.
radiation
It's an
hits on the camera.
Argentinian
So those are not
aircraft.
colorful stars in the
That's when
background.
I,
wish they were. That'd be very cool.
Back in
But that is
1998 when
actually
I
just a
started
little bit
doing
of
my
damage to the camera itself from being
my
in
first
the
lessons.
space environment.
to
Of
learn
course,
how
the
to
colorful dots on board Dragon
learn how
are
to be a
actually
pilot.
spillover from the aviation
You can
industry
Google
being
it.
used to
It's
indicate
Alpha
the
Bravo
and starboard
115.
flights of Dragon itself.
It's a tail drag aircraft. That was the first one that I ever flew. Those lights behind
We talked a
the
little bit
spacecraft,
about
that's just
the-
pixels. That's not.
obviously,
Those are
Dragon
not
Freedom
stars.
Flight
Okay,
PTA
it's just
with Crew-9,
pixels
and then the Dragon,
from the
with
sun is
Crew-8
hitting the camera
arriving
right now
at the zenith
from the
port
side
of
and
the
it's
Harmony
creating that
module, but there are other visiting spacecraft on the
false
space
that
station right now.
optical
Those include the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft launched just a couple of weeks ago and brought up 3 additional crew members. They'll stay on board for about 6 months.
yeah, it's getting dark
We
now,
also have
so
2 Progress resupply spacecraft. Those are also
you're
from
just gonna see
Roscosmos,
now
Progress
flashes
88
of the
and 89. Those are
Dragon spacecraft
resupply
as
spacecraft.
it
So they
approaches
come up
the
with
International
food,
Space Station,
fuel,
about 15 minutes or
any
so.
materials or hardware for the crew living and working aboard. And then we also have Northrop Grumman's Cygnus 21, so their 21st flight to the International Space Station. That's another resupply spacecraft bringing up cargo and hardware.
Getting views still of
Then
Dragon as it
after
approaches the
that
space station
Alpha
here on
Bravo
your
115,
screen.
115
Fading
that
a
I
little bit
flew.
as we head into that
I
orbital
flew
nighttime.
Cessna 150, Cessna 172, Cessna 182,
Houston Station on 2.
Piper,
1.102.
aircraft
Step 3, we are
Seneca,
ready for docking.
turboprops, Embraer
Houston
110,
copies, and at waypoint 2, Dragon will hold for
Citation XL,
approximately
Citation
5
Sovereign, Falcon 7X, CJ4. That's it.
Station copies. In correction on previous call, we're in step 3.
Oh, Aero Commander. I flew the Aero Commander.
Houston copies.
That sounds like NASA astronaut.
All right, go for docking.
Dominic, he is monitoring from inside the cupola. That is our window to the world aboard the International Space Station. So almost all of the photos that you see taken by our crew
Yeah, that
members
shot is
are
not really
taken from
great right
inside the
now. It's
cupola,
a
and
lot
that
of
also allows us to monitor the arrival
pixels
and
and
departure of spacecraft like Matt and his colleague Mike Barrett, are also a NASA astronaut, are doing today. So we did hear the call out that they will hold at waypoint 2 for just a few minutes and then proceed in for docking. And good news that the station side is go for docking today.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear, especially because we have been working through all
yesterday
of these
we
methodical,
watched the
careful
live
steps in the lead up to this
launch,
docking
right?
effort.
I don't know if you saw that.
About 20 meters away from the station's docking adapter, Dragon's approach
No,
is
I
going
never
to
been
slow
never been
in
an
preparation in
ATC
part for
guy
the hold,
before.
and it will begin to align itself with the docking adapter to come in for that final approach.
Yeah, the camera shot is
And we
not really
did
great.
get
Usually they have better
that,
camera
we have
angles.
passed waypoint 1. Again, we're going to hold at waypoint 2. The waypoint 2 is about 20 meters from the International Space Station. So you can hold longer if you want to. We're going to hold about 5 minutes today, but you can hold longer if you want to, if you wanted to wait for better lighting conditions or just reconfiguring
quiet,
anything
the
on either
transmission
Dragon
now.
side or station side. But 5 minutes is a pretty short hold just to make sure everybody is ready for that final push in for docking. And then, like we also mentioned earlier, we'll have one last call out in that time frame, which will be CHOP. And that's the crew hands-off point. It happens about 2 meters from the International Space Station, so very close. And that means that if we needed to, if Dragon needed to back away from the space station at that time,
Hello,
it would
US
not be
Aviation.
executed by
Hello.
the crew. It would
Thanks
need
for
to be
watching.
executed by Dragon itself.
Guys,
So
don't
an
forget to like
autonomous,
and subscribe to our
retreat.
channel.
And all of Dragon's flight has been autonomous from all of its burns and its rendezvous
about
and its
to
docking
reach
itself. It'll be completely flying
The
on its own.
8,000 subscribers mark. We're really
So
close.
this view on the right side of your screen.
So if
from
you're watching
Mission
here for the
Control
first time,
Hawthorne,
subscribe to our channel.
They have been on console for the
Help
last
us reach that
26
8,000
hours,
mark.
actually almost 28 hours now, monitoring the flight of Dragon up to the International Space Station. Just a couple of hours ago, we heard that big loop configured, meaning that
We are
Hawthorne,
5
Dragon, the International Space
subscribers
Station,
away
and Mission Control in Houston are
from
all
reaching
able
that
to talk to each
8,000.
other.
Who's going to be
Freedom
number
SpaceX on
8,000?
Big loop, self-capturing
All right, let's
extraction
go. Hit that
complete.
subscribe.
Reminder, we will be holding for about 5 minutes at waypoint 2. If you'd like, you can keep your visors up until we are getting ready to command into approach 2 out of that hold.
And Freedom copies, good subduct ring extension. We're going to hold at waypoint 2. We'll keep visors up until then. And
Yeah, that's the
just to let you know,
Crew-9
we
docking
are,
on the International Space Station.
Station's pretty dark in the center line camera.
We're
Looking
about
at
to
thermal
dock
until we get
in
closer.
less than 15 minutes.
SpaceX copies. Sounds good.
And then
And yeah,
in about an hour, they're going to
for
open the
lighting conditions
hatch.
and eclipse now. Should brighten up in approach 2 on center line.
Freedom copies.
Good confirmation there from Mission Control that we obviously have our Crew-9 astronauts suited up and waiting to approach that waypoint 2. We also heard the call out from Mission Control there that the astronauts are welcome to leave their visors up. One of the things that's pretty cool about the IVA suits is that they are fully integrated and tailored to the astronaut who is wearing them. So the visor is one of the only mobile parts of the suit. Everything else is connected. The helmet, the gloves, the boots, everything is custom tailored to the astronaut wearing that IVA suit, including including everything going on to their communications with the ground, the umbilical that actually mates from the thigh of the suit to the chair on board of the Dragon spacecraft.
We did also hear that the soft capture ring is deployed. So there are sort of two phases to docking. There's soft capture, that's our initial contact for Dragon and the International Space Station. And then that ring will retract once we make that contact, and we'll start getting hard capture. That's when we get into those locks or those latches and hooks driving to provide a
right,
firm,
Toast, another one that
secure,
talks.
connection from Dragon and the International Space Station.
Thanks, guys.
We'll
Thanks
also
for
see
watching.
some umbilical checks and connections as well, too.
All right,
And we are
about 10
standing by
minutes.
as well for a go no go poll in Mission Control Houston. We may not hear it here,
watch the
but
docking.
we will have a go no go poll from Mission Control Houston in just a couple of minutes for the docking. But it's good news all around so far. Heard that the astronauts aboard the International Space Station are ready for docking themselves. So we're standing by for waypoint 2 coming up next. We may dock a little bit early today. We were targeting around 2:30 Pacific. That could happen about 2:26 p.m. Pacific time. So,
all right. So 4
early
minutes.
is good.
There we
Early
go.
is good.
That's great. One of the other things
So,
we're hearing as
6
we
minutes
heard
to
chatter
go.
back and forth between Mission Control
6
are
minutes
these
until
beeps
docking.
as comms begin both outbound and inbound. Those actually date back
Waiting on
all the way
the,
to the early days of human spaceflight and are known as
some
Quindar
views,
tones.
right, from the
They
outside.
used to effectively be radio signals that we had comms coming in and out. They're a holdover these days. They're not strictly necessary, but because they are part of the history of human spaceflight and a really convenient way for us to manage these communications back and forth between Mission Control and the astronauts, you can hear them on all of our
I don't
crew
know why they
launches
don't-
on
they
board
are not
Dragon,
showing the,
and obviously keeping us in touch not only with Dragon and Mission Control here in
cameras.
Hawthorne, but also the International Space Station and Mission Control Houston.
It also helps us know when that comms is coming here as communicators, because
Yes.
those are the most important comms of the day. Anything we say is much secondary. It takes a backseat to anything that you could hear from the crew members in orbit or the team members here on the ground really leading the operations. So we like to listen for those, and we are quick to be quiet as soon as we hear that
Absolutely.
there might be some crew comms incoming.
It also just sounds like space to me. I think it's the history of everything, and having seen it on all of the crew flights from Demo 2 to Crew-9 on board Dragon, that sounds like we have space coming in. So always eager to hear what the crew or Mission Control has to say.
It looks like we're about 90 seconds away from waypoint 2.
All right, there you go.
Again, that's about 20 meters away from the space station. We are already on the docking
We
axis.
have
so
video
we
now.
are right
It's
aligned
dark, right?
with
You only
the
see
Node 2 forward
flashes.
port, that Harmony forward port that Dragon will be calling home today.
And because of that, we are getting these views of Dragon with space in the background on that docking axis instead of the Earth behind it. So if you are just joining us, we don't have a super clear view right now, but the lights that you're seeing are Dragon on board your screen as it approaches the International Space
not really
Station.
clear.
Again, if just in case you're just joining us, we are tracking initial contact between Dragon and our Crew-9 astronauts at about 2:26 p.m. Pacific time.
There you go. You heard that.
That'll begin with
2:26
that
p.m.
obviously soft
Pacific
capture
time for you,
followed
Toast.
by a hard capture.
That's the
During the hard capture maneuver, Dragon will
scheduled
actually
time for docking.
extend 12 hooks into the international docking adapter to make sure that
And
we
it
have
takes
really
a
tight
while, a lot of
contact between
procedures
Dragon and
after
the space
docking,
station
right?
before we begin pressurizing the vestibule between the two vehicles.
And again, we do expect
like
that
she-
docking
like
today
she
will
said, you
probably
have
take
to-
place in darkness. Unfortunately, we love those views when we are in an orbital daytime, but like we mentioned earlier,
Equalize
we
the
see 16
pressure
sunrises and
between
sunsets a day, so we
both
see about 45 minutes
the
in
International
darkness
Space
and 45
Station
minutes
and the
in
Dragon
daylight.
spacecraft
Right now, we are in,
in
one
order
of
for
those
them to
orbital
open the
night
hatch.
times, flying 261 statute miles over the country of Togo. So we are standing by again for waypoint 2 arrival. We expect to
Hi, Lena.
pause, and it looks like we could see a couple of thruster firings as we get ready to execute that 5-minute hold at waypoint 2 before moving in for final approach and docking to the Node 2 forward port with Dragon and Crew-9.
This is
I
the
love you.
second Dragon that's going to be mated to the International Space Station. Oh, we've got some good Draco pulses on your screen there right now. Again, this
Yeah,
is the
Toast,
second
that's
Dragon
my
that's
wife.
going to be on board the ISS once we've got this docking complete today. Because we do have the Crew-8 Dragon also currently mated to the International Space Station.
Yeah, she talks.
Crew-8 and Crew-9 are going to do an active handover here.
Guys,
where
say
the
hi
crews
in the
work
chat.
together
If
to
you're watching here for
transition
the first
current
time, let us know
operations
where
on
you're
board
watching
the
from.
station, any ongoing
have,
scientific research.
Brazil
And
in
then
the
Crew-8
house.
will
We have
return home
USA,
in about a week,
Canada.
depending on weather conditions, in the same capsule that
Who
they
else?
rode up on. So it's interesting because that capsule stays with the crew for the duration duration of their mission, which obviously means that we at SpaceX here are monitoring Dragon throughout the mission, from its initial launch, the entire time it's docked on station, through that splashdown for each crew.
Did just get confirmation that we are holding at waypoint 2, so we may hear a call to the crew in just a moment confirming that as well. Again,
Yeah, it's
expecting
dark,
maybe
huh?
a 5-minute hold, 20 meters right now away from the International Space Station. It is
Be nice to
truly
see.
slow and steady, wins the race. With that 5-minute hold, we talked about maybe a 2:26 p.m. docking, a 2:30 p.m. docking. It's nebulous a little bit at this point. We just take the time that we need at this hold, and so we may be back a little bit closer to the 2:30 docking. But we will make sure to let you know exactly where the International Space Station and Dragon are flying and the time of docking as soon as that happens. So this is the final hold in the mission before we welcome Dragon and Crew-9 to the station itself.
This really is a dynamic phase of flight, too. Part of the reason that we're monitoring these things and listening in on mission control is that we have a lot of teams working together to assess the situation as it unfolds. So the good news is that we've had a really smooth flight so far for our Crew-9 astronauts who did lift off yesterday from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. They spent about 28 hours on their way to the International Space Station. And as Leah mentioned, we are holding here at waypoint 2.
It's about to
Just
dock
about
now.
20 meters away from the space station, awaiting that final approach and docking.
Currently, Mission Control Houston is conducting their poll to ensure that we are go for final approach and docking when we depart waypoint 2. Again, final hold point for today's mission. So this is really game time. We are getting close to seeing these 2 new crew members arrive at the space station. Again, once they dock, it'll take about 2 hours for all of the operations required before we see them float through the hatch. That includes vestibule depressurization. That's the space between Dragon and the International Space Station itself. And right now, it is exposed to vacuum.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to
SpaceX on the
subscribe.
Big Loop. Ground is go for final approach.
Go for final approach.
Confirm
Go for
crew
docking.
readiness for approach, and visors are down.
Visors down. Let's go. All right, they're gonna dock now.
And SpaceX Freedom.
We need
visors
5
down.
more
We
subscribers
are
to
go
hit
for docking.
the 8,000 mark.
SpaceX
Let's do it.
copies. As a reminder, once Dragon is
It's
inside
5.
the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout
Hit the
are not
subscribe
permitted.
button. We're gonna hit 8,000 now.
Good copies.
And Freedom SpaceX, we are resuming approach.
Good copies.
Awesome news there from Mission Control, and of course hearing our Crew-9 astronauts on board Dragon that we are go for docking.
Go for
If
dock.
you're watching closely, you're also seeing some great pulses from those Draco thrusters on board as Dragon approaches the ISS for that final docking
Yeah,
maneuver.
the images usually the images
Again,
for
that
docking
was
is
the
better than
final
this.
hold, and we heard the communications that we are
You see
go
those
for docking and have
flashings of
resumed
light
that approach.
there?
So we will not hold again. And they discussed CHOP, which we
That's
mentioned
the,
earlier, the crew hands-off
Dragon
point.
spacecraft.
That's within 2 meters from the International Space Station.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 in
Here it comes.
1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies, step 5 and 6.
So those sound like similar communications, but the first was to the crew on Dragon. The second is to our crew monitoring in the cupola, and you heard them reference what they should be looking at, any procedures that they're referencing during this dynamic phase. And we're continuing to see Dragon get closer to the International Space Station, now about 17 meters away from the docking port. Again, we do expect to be
17
in
meters.
an orbital nighttime during
Oh,
docking,
there you go.
but this is
Better-
a pretty cool view, as you can see.
Better view now
the
with
camera
the
coming
camera.
from Dragon and focusing on the docking port
That
itself.
camera is
So it
from
looks
the
like we are
Dragon
properly
spacecraft
aligned
that's pointing
with
to
that
the
node 2 forward port
hatch.
as we continue to approach, now just 15 meters away.
Nice.
Seeing good real-time readouts on your screen there. Just in the upper right-hand corner, you can see
you can
our
see over
LiDAR
here,
geometry,
13
indicating
meters.
how close we are to the International
Right
Space
there.
Station.
"12 meters.
LiDAR, of course, stands for light radar, and it is used in maneuvers like this in space to help two spacecraft meet each other.
And that helps us to not need daylight when we are
11
executing
meters.
these maneuvers. So again, I mentioned this is happening in the dark. We can hold and wait for different lighting conditions if we needed to, but because we have this LiDAR technology, we're able to continue moving in. And like you mentioned, Ronnie, if you look in the top left, you can see we're now just about 10 meters away from
Freedom
the
is 10
International
meters.
Space Station.
10 meters.
Oh, confirmation from the crew, 10 meters
Copy,
away.
10.
There we go. Really slow.
Of course, now we're also within that crew hands-off point, in large part because the autonomous systems on board Dragon, which we're getting kind of a representation of on your screen right now, are completing this final docking maneuver.
8.5 meters. Right there on the right side, you can see the range.
Looks like just about 7.5 meters to go.
Again, first, we will be holding for soft capture. When that soft capture ring makes contact with the space station, that will then retract and begin hard capture. But docking for us is called at the time of soft capture.
5 meters.
5 meters.
Copy, 5.
Standing by for the arrival of Crew-9 to the International Space Station.
We are also getting some pretty good views here of Dragon approaching station, even though we are in an orbital nighttime and it's pretty dark. That's exciting to see how close these spacecraft are to each other.
Yeah, now just about 4 meters away.
I like that other shot better, right? That other angle.
Standing by for the call for CHOP, crew hands-off point.
Freedom 2 meters, hands off.
2 meters.
Less than 2 meters away, standing by for docking.
Now they're gonna have the soft contact and then
1 meter.
there you go. Contact. Soft contact. There you go.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop, soft capture confirmed.
Soft capture. Nice. Good job.
Freedom copy. Speed soft capture.
Crew-9 has arrived to the International Space Station. Docking confirmed at 4:30 p.m. Central Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time over Botswana.
Over Botswana, Africa.
Now, we still have a few steps to complete before Dragon is securely attached to the station. So we're going to go ahead and follow those along as well.
Now they're going to follow a bunch of
We are
procedures.
standing by for the hard capture
checklists,
sequence start, and then we will also hear a call out for
checks.
hard docking complete. We're expecting that a little bit more than 10 minutes from now.
Freedom SpaceX, ring retraction in progress.
I think it's going to take about an hour and a half
Copies.
until the hatch opens.
Retraction in progress.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to
Again,
subscribe
they're referencing the
to
soft
YouTube
capture
channel.
ring that will slowly retract
And let us know where you're watching
and bring
from.
Dragon closer to the International Space Station.
We're almost
We'll get
hitting
into
that
hard
8,000
capture
mark.
sequence with the hooks and latches, providing us a hard docking, and that happens about 10 minutes after docking itself. Again,
All right,
Crew-9 arriving at the International Space Station.
SpaceX
as the station
Crew-9.
and Dragon, we're flying about 265
Just
statute
docked
miles
with the ISS,
over
International
Botswana
Space
at
Station,
4:30
over
p.m. Central
South
Time,
Africa right
5:30
now,
p.m.
over
Eastern Time.
Botswana, approaching South Africa.
Of course, those hard capture rings aren't the only thing that we're going to attach between Dragon and the space station. We also have a series of umbilicals and other systems that really help integrate Dragon to the space station once both vehicles are mated together.
And this continues to be a I don't want to say slow, but a methodical process
Yeah.
of
It's a slow
bringing
process.
the crew on board the space station. So
But
yes,
it's a,
we do
yeah, like
consider
she
them
said,
docked
it's
at
a
this
lot of
point. We are
procedures, a lot of
awaiting for
checklists,
that
a lot
hard
of.
dock to be confirmed.
Yep.
But we will still have a couple of hours before we actually open the hatch and see the crew fly through. So NASA astronaut Jeanette Epps on the space station side is going to be prime. She's the lead for pressurizing the vestibule, that space between Dragon and the station hatch, that will be opened and allow the crew members to fly through it and join their new home for the next 5 months. So we will stand by for that, but that does take a couple of hours, and then we will finally have 11 people aboard the International Space Station for about the next week.
Has to be an exciting time to be on station. Obviously, at this point, everything we're doing, as you mentioned, is very methodical, and that's because we're still in a dynamic phase of flight before we have all 11 members of our crew together on board Expedition 72. We've obviously heard a couple call-outs to our crew that they are wearing their IVA suits, now visors down, due to the dynamic nature of this flight environment. And we'll move through all of these steps until we can bring everybody together, and then, like you mentioned earlier, maybe change into something that's a little bit less spacefaring, a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, we'll probably see them float through in something like their flight suits. You know, NASA astronauts typically wear blue flight suits, so we'll see what they show up in today. But I am definitely looking forward to seeing them float through the hatch. Now, again, we only have 2 crew members on Dragon today arriving, and the 2 empty seats that were with them will be occupied by NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams upon their return sometime next February. So we will be excited to see them back on Earth as well. So it's
Yeah,
about 5
the
months
2
stay
astronauts,
for
they're
NASA astronaut
they're
Nick
now
Hague
in
and
the
Alex,
space station. That
Alexander
remember, I don't know if you
Corbanoff,
saw
who
that.
have just
That
docked to the
Boeing-
International Space
Boeing,
Station. Again, that happened
capsule,
at 4:30
right?
p.m.
The
Central,
Starliner
5:30 Eastern,
capsule
just about 4 or 5
that had a
minutes ago
malfunction
now.
or issue,
We are
something,
still
right? That was
standing
not
by
safe for the
for
astronauts to
soft
return
capturing
to
the
Earth.
traction to be complete
Now they have
before
to
the
spend
hard
another
capture
6
sequence
months
starts, and we
there,
get into
and they're going to
driving
return
those
using
hooks
the
and
Dragon
latches
9
and firmly securing Dragon to
Crew-9
the space station.
spacecraft back next year, for them to return to Earth
If
next
you joined
year.
us during our webcast yesterday, you know that these hooks were actually exposed when we opened the nose cone shortly after Dragon made it to orbit. That's one of our major milestones during our launch event. We did have an on-time liftoff yesterday from Space Launch Complex 40, followed by
Freedom SpaceX ring retraction complete, docking sequence holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Oh, that's a nice picture from the
holding for MCS reconfig.
inside Dragon right now. The 2 astronauts, the cosmonaut, right? And the American astronaut.
So confirmation that the soft capture ring, that first step in the docking process, has completely retracted. We will soon move into the hard capture process. Sounds like they're standing by for reconfiguration before doing so. But you can hear that the crew on Dragon are still speaking with the core here in Hawthorne, the crew operations resource engineer. So once they float into the hatch, though, they really become Expedition 72 crew members, not just Crew-9 crew
Hello
members.
guys, thanks for watching. Don't
And
forget
they
to
will
like.
start,
We are watching live the
communicating
docking of
almost
the
solely
spacecraft
with
Crew-9
the flight director
with
in,
the International Space Station.
Capcom in Houston. That's the capsule communicator. Really serves the same role as what we have here in Hawthorne with the core. That's the single person in the room that communicates with the crew. That keeps all of the communications streamlined, so you don't have a ton of different voices at different consoles.
Station Houston, on the big loop, MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
there's confirmation there that we are moving forward with that hard docking and that we're talking over the big loop. So as you mentioned earlier, right now we're all communicating each team with different key personnel to minimize the amount of crosstalk that we have, but everyone can hear each other. The big loop does include mission control here in SpaceX, mission control Houston, the Dragon spacecraft, and the International Space Station.
And I can see that we do have those.
Yesterday was the launch.
You
can see the replay.
So we'll have one set
Let's go ahead and watch that replay from yesterday launch.
That's our final go for launch. SpaceX reporting.
I don't know if you missed that yesterday. You can watch. Now I'm gonna. That was the launch from yesterday.
Seconds.
Standing by for the first launch of humans from Space Launch Complex 40.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
It was yesterday launch.
Ignition, full power, and liftoff. Crew-9, go SpaceX, go Falcon, go NASA.
Liftoff of Crew-9 now soaring to the International Space Station.
Stage 1 Alpha.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Yeah, that was the yesterday launch.
Those 9 Merlin engines now providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust, propelling Falcon 9 and Crew-9 and continuing to get good calls from teams here on the ground.
Of course, these incredible views mean we are just a little bit past 30 minutes or 30 seconds into our 9th rotational.
It was
cruise.
beautiful yesterday.
Telemetry nominal.
Onboard Dragon and Falcon 9 with good callouts from mission control that everything
Stage
is
1
looking
throttle
good.
down.
With that, stage 1 is throttling down to pass through max Q, which is the period of maximum dynamic pressure on Falcon 9 during ascent.
We had the launch and the landing
Confirmation of max Q,
of the stage 1 back
Vehicle is supersonic.
and that Falcon 9 is now traveling faster
At the
than
Cape.
speed of sound.
Stage 1 throttle up.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage and continuing to get good performance.
And vac chill is underway.
So it took
Crew
them
is pulling just over 2 Gs at
a
this
little bit
point.
over
Next up, we heard the engine chill on the second stage MVAC
a day
engine
or
has
so
begun,
for them
and then we
to
will have MECO,
from
or
launch
main
to
engine
docking,
cutoff,
right?
where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and the second stages, and then will separate from one another. Then that single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew-9 to orbit while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth. Two minutes in, and the crew is now traveling over 2,600 miles per hour.
Stage 1 is throttling down.
Confirmation there from mission control that stage 1 is throttling down as we prepare for main engine cutoff, followed shortly thereafter by stage separation and second engine start 1. You did hear mission control out that we are chilling our
MECO.
There's
MECO.
confirmation of MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
second engine
Stage 2 Alpha.
And vac ignition.
ignition.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
With that, we have had confirmation of MECO, stage SEP, and the ignition of our MVAC engine on board stage 2. Our next major milestone is going to be the
And you can
beginning
see
of
here on
stage 1 boost back
on the
burn,
engine,
which
you're
is
gonna see
expected in
what the people call the
just a couple of seconds here.
mice. Mouses. Mouse, like the animal, like the mice. That's just
Of course,
condensation.
if you are just joining us, you've got views
There's
of
a
our
big,
first stage on the left-hand side of
uh,
your screen and of MVAC burning
there was
with
a
our
big,
Crew-9 astronauts aboard up in space on the right-hand side of your screen.
Thing back in the day that people
Now we
start
are
to
coming up on
see
3 minutes and
movement
20
here in the
seconds
engine and
since
said, oh, there are
liftoff today,
mice
traveling
at
over
the engine.
4,000
How they can
miles per
survive
hour
in the space?
and
That's
76
fake.
miles downrange.
No, it's not mice. You're gonna see them showing right there.
As our first stage makes its way back to Earth, we are tracking a landing attempt today at landing zone 1, not too far from where we lifted off in Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Dragon, space.
Again, that's a replay from yesterday's launch.
Confirmation there that both
Launch,
vehicles
right?
Copy nominal trajectory.
are on nominal trajectories. Everything is looking good.
And we're getting good performance on that single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. The crew's G-load dips right now. We are going to prepare to hit the separation event. Right now, they're about 1
Right
G
there, look at the
from what
mice.
we're used to
Look at the
experiencing
mice.
on Earth.
Right there, moving. You see people call, oh, there's a mouse. There's a mouse on the engine. How can this mouse survive at that altitude? This is
It's
fake.
traveling almost 5,000
No,
miles
it's
per
not.
hour now and 105 miles in altitude.
It's just condensation. And since there is
As we
no
await the
air,
burn for our first
right,
stage, you are getting
at that
great views of
altitude.
it on the left-hand side of your screen. You can also see 2 of our titanium grid fins, which are the primary mechanical structures.
you see that this
Space
foil,
nominal trajectory.
it's not moving at all because there is no air,
Control,
right? It's
everything is
just,
still looking good.
look, another mouse.
Freedom copies nominal trajectory.
Nada
Now,
mais.
as I mentioned, those grid fins are the primary mechanical structures that we use to steer the booster back
You
toward
can
its
see that
landing zone,
there's no
which
air
today
because you
is
see the
LZ1
foil
at
is
Cape
not
Canaveral.
moving at all. It's just
Just
shaking
kind of a
because of
quick point of
the
reference, those
engine,
grid fins are about
but it's
4
not
by 5
moving with
feet,
the
so roughly
air.
the size of a coffee
There's
table.
no air to create that. Look, nada mais. Nada mouse.
Getting our first tracking shots of the booster on its way back to Earth. Again, we are tracking the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen, and
Again, if you're
NVAC
here
up
for
in
the first
space on
time,
the right.
let us know where you're watching from. Thanks for watching. Watching now the
And we do
replay from
continue to hear
yesterday
good
launch.
calls for that second stage. Again, we will see this continue.
We are
to
waiting
fire
now for the
until close to 9 minutes
hatch
into the
opening.
flight.
That's gonna
Now at
happen
5
in a
minutes and
few
45 seconds
hours.
since liftoff today. This is
But we are
accelerating
watching
Dragon to more than
Dragon,
17,000.
SpaceX,
yesterday's launch.
More good news.
And we're gonna see the landing now. And
The
we're
second
gonna hear
stage
the
is bringing
sonic
Dragon to
boom.
more than 17,000 miles per hour.
We're gonna hear the
That puts
sonic
our
boom.
crew in orbit. And the single Merlin vacuum engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space.
As the first stage lands back in the Kennedy Space Center. Here goes the entry burn of the first stage. And let's see if we can see another mouse.
Stage 1 does perform 3 burns on its way back to Earth. The first is the
No.
boost back burn,
Here
followed
comes.
shortly
It's gonna
thereafter by
land.
the entry burn. The entry burn is used by Falcon 9 to slow the vehicle down before it reaches the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Nominal trajectories there from mission control.
Let's hear the sonic boom.
Freedom copies, nominal trajectory.
That entry burn is, of course, followed by the landing burn, during which time we'll light 3 of the Merlin engines on board the first stage. And we expect to see that landing burn just about a minute before we expect Dragon to be inserted into orbit. So we have 2 very exciting phases of flight, both for our first stage and our Crew-9 astronauts happening here at the same time.
Boom, boom. Let's hear. There we go. Nice. That was pretty.
Stage 2, FTS has based.
So a great touchdown of stage 1 there just a second ago. And now, of course, we are continuing to follow our Crew-9 astronauts on their way to space.
And we continue to get good calls for this second stage, that Merlin vacuum engine continuing to fire and propel our crew, now moving over 12,600 miles per hour and 611 miles downrange. Just over 8 minutes since liftoff today, so we are expecting to see this continue to fire until just about the 9-minute mark, at which point this engine will cut off. And of course, Dragon will
Not a
coast
mouse.
for a few minutes, still attached
Terminal
to the second
guidance.
stage.
Again, guys, if you're here, just got here, this is a replay from yesterday launch.
Shannon.
That call.
Copy, Shannon.
That call is for Shannon, Ireland. That would be the abort zone if we were to abort at this point in the flight. However, we are continuing to hear good calls about Dragon's performance.
MVAC shutdown.
Confirmation of the Merlin vacuum engine shutting
Yeah,
down.
second engine cut off.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
That's it.
Good news there from
And Freedom
mission,
copies, nominal orbital
17
insertion.
miles per hour. That's a
from
speed.
mission
27
control and our crew
kilometers
that
per
we have
hour.
had
That's a
nominal
speed
orbit
for
insertion.
Launch escape
Orbit.
system disarmed.
That's not. It's not a mouse. It's just
Freedom
condensation
copies,
from the
LES
engine.
disarmed.
In,
You see that when the engine shuts down, the
in 9
condensation
quick
goes away.
minutes, we now have
You see,
2
you don't see
new
the condensation
crew
anymore.
members
That's it.
on their way to the International Space Station, having taken off from Space Launch Complex 40.
So yeah, 27 kilometers
The
per
crew now
hour
being in
in order
a
for
good or
to
expected
reach
orbit.
orbit.
We'll continue to
17
coast
miles
for
per
these
hour.
few minutes and And then we get our first views inside the capsule of our two crew members, Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov. They are just continuing to stay in their suits and in their seats during this dynamic portion of the flight. We're going to continue to coast for a few minutes after this second stage engine cutoff. This allows the rates and motion from that long burn to settle out. There are some small reaction thrusters on the upper stage or the upper part of the second stage that can be used to counteract any residual motion. That basically makes sure we're in a stable coast before Dragon separates from Falcon, and that'll happen about 12 minutes into the flight. So about a minute and a half from now, we expect to see Dragon actually separating from the second stage. Again, we did hear the crew has been successfully inserted into a good orbit. And again, this is them now in microgravity, one of them, Alexander Gorbanov, for the very first time.
So as Leah mentioned, we are now just a few minutes away from the separation of Dragon from stage 2, during which time a number of activation checkouts occur. Automatically, first we're going to be checking out 12 of the Draco maneuvering thrusters, all around the service section of the Dragon spacecraft. We're also, of course, going to get ready for that nose cone opening, which will allow Dragon to dock with the International Space Station about 28 hours from now. The nose cone stays closed for the flight uphill to help protect against all of the guidance, navigation, and control sensors and Dragon's docking adapter. It's also covering 4 of our Draco thrusters that will be used for the majority of different phasing burns required as Dragon chases down the space station. We are currently standing by for that separation, which could happen anytime in the next couple of minutes.
I'm inside of the Dragon now.
Currently, you
Let
can
me
see
put
the crew is
myself
just
here in the
relaxing in
chair.
their seats. They are definitely
Right,
vigilant.
I'm
Though.
there
They
with
are able to
those guys in
monitor
space.
those crew
Hey,
displays in front of them.
I'm
Keep
here
up with
in
what's
space.
going on in the mission. They could take control if they needed to. However, it's been a seamless ride to space today.
Good views there, looking up into Dragon's trunk, looking at the heat shield on the bottom of Dragon that Crew-9 will use when it returns home early next year.
Alright, separation. There you go. That was yesterday, right? When the capsule
Dragon SpaceX, Dragon separation confirmed.
separates from the second stage.
Copies. Good separation.
There you heard from Mission Control, both
Dragon Chief Engineer on Countdown 1. Nick, Alex, on behalf of the entire team, we thank you for flying with Falcon 9 today and wish you a great mission.
And Freedom, this is Launch Director on Countdown. On behalf of the entire SpaceX Launch and Recovery team, I'd like to extend our congratulations to the entire Crew-9 team. Zena, Stephanie, Nick, Alex, Butch, and Sunny. It's an honor to be a part of this mission with all of you. I'd also like to give a shout out to the Falcon 9 Crew-9 combo. The best bundle in the league, baby. Godspeed, Crew-9.
Couldn't say it any better. Thank you, guys. You know, we had the opportunity to meet so many people that were involved with the Falcon 9, and along the way was a sweet ride. I'm pretty sure my youngest son would say it was Sigma. Alex has got a few words to add as well.
All the agencies that made this launch possible. Roscosmos, NASA, Big SpaceX. And thank you to my family and friends for their support. And also I'd like to express my gratitude to the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who are involved in the development of space technologies.
Thanks guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to our channel, like the video. We're watching the replay from yesterday's launch. The crew is already docked with the International Space Station. We are now waiting for the hatch opening. It's going to take place in about 2 hours or so. We're going to be live streaming that as well. For that hatch opening and the welcome ceremony. Alright, guys, I'm going to take a break now. We're going to come back in about 2 hours or so.
In orbit on your screen right now.
Hey, aleatório. Hello. Você é brasileiro ou aleatório? Hi, I'm new to our channel. Okay, thanks, aleatório. Thanks for watching. Alright, that was a replay from yesterday's launch.
Coming up on 15 minutes now since liftoff today. You got a quick look inside the capsule.
Dragon SpaceX, we had a nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts. Nose cone
And that's
deployed.
the live from SpaceX
And Freedom copies all. Thank you.
center, right? Control center. All right, we're gonna come
Confirmation there
back
that our nose cone
in a
deploy
few
is
hours
underway.
for the
That means
hatch
that the 6
opening
hooks that
and
hold the
dock,
nose cone
right?
in
Yeah,
place-
from Brasil
in
Aleatório.
place
Obrigado
during
por
launch
assistir.
and the ascent
Valeu
portions
aí.
of flight have begun
Tamo
to
junto.
retract.
Não esquece
That will
de
allow
seguir
the
a
nose
gente
cone
aí.
to start to swing open and deploy. That will uncover a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the
Daqui a
forward
pouco eu
bulkhead
volto.
thrusters and the
I'll be back
docking
in a few
hatch.
moments, few hours, right, to see the docking and the hatch opening. I'm sorry, the hatch opening and the welcome ceremony. Right?
Incredible
See you
views
guys in a
from
few
our crew
minutes.
up in space on your screen right now, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to the view out of Dragon's window as they make their way to the space station.
I can only imagine. And that journey to the space station will take about 28 hours, so they won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, they will have the opportunity to get out of their suits, to get out of their seats as well, and kind of just enjoy the ride. They're going to shift into some off-duty time. That allows them to prepare any food that they would want to. That allows them to maybe even call down to the ground. They will also obviously get some sleep before a really big day tomorrow, monitoring the arrival and docking to the International Space Station. Of course, we're going to cover all of that live. I'm really looking forward to seeing 2 more crew members float into the orbiting laboratory. And if you're just joining us, we did lift off now at 16 minutes and 29 seconds ago. That was right on time at 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40 down at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We have 2 members on board Dragon today. That's NASA astronaut Nick Hague, who's serving as the commander, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, who's making his very first flight to space. Once they arrive at the International Space Station tomorrow afternoon, they will be joining 9 other crew members on orbit. They'll be up there for about a week. A week is probably the best guess until the Crew-8 team, it is time for that crew to come home. Of course, they launched about 7 months ago at this point, and they will undock after they have completed a handover period with the Crew-9 crew, bringing them up to speed on everything that they've been working on for the last 7 months in orbit. So once they depart, we'll be back down to our typical approximately 7 people living and working aboard the International Space Station.
We are getting really spectacular views from up in space today. Shot there of our MVAC engine. We did get confirmation several minutes ago of SES-1.
We know that nose cone opening is underway as well. Those are a series of hooks and latches that allow the nose cone to open. And that nose cone is closed during launch to protect the docking hatch, to protect 4 bulkhead thrusters that we will use for some of the larger burns that help us get to the 7:03 a.m. Pacific, Dragon executed the phase burn. This is the first of 5 major burns required to raise Dragon's orbit and position it for approach to the International Space Station. Dragon raised its orbit using the Draco thrusters over the last several hours as it continues to chase down its destination, the space station.
And then just a few hours ago, the boost burn took place at 7:58 p.m. Pacific time. The boost burn put our crew in an orbit where Dragon's apogee, or the highest point of the orbit, is about 10 kilometers lower than the station. But before we can approach the station, we need Dragon's entire orbit, not just that highest point, to be effectively shadowing the space station. So after that, we executed the close co-elliptic burn at 8:42 p.m. Pacific. The close burn placed Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station, meaning that it's maintaining an orbit roughly 10 kilometers lower than the station the entire way around the Earth. Again, that's in contrast to only being 10 kilometers lower than the station during the apogee, or the highest point in the orbit, which is what was achieved by the boost burn beforehand.
Now from there, this morning at 7:54 a.m. Pacific time, we executed the 4th major maneuver known
Freedom
as...
copies, go. 2001 Zulu.
And that was good news from the crew. It sounded like Commander Nick Hague aboard Dragon. They just got the go for the approach initiation burn. We're tracking that in a little less than 30 minutes now. However, let's rewind a little bit. This morning we did execute the transfer burn, 7:54 a.m. Pacific time. That's where we raised Dragon's apogee, or the highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers lower than the station. Then we rounded everything out with the final co-elliptic burn at 8:41 a.m. Pacific to once again maintain that constant orbit lower than the station, this time just 2.5 kilometers below. That was a shorter burn lasting just over 30 seconds. And recently at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, we added in the approach out of plane burn to further refine Dragon's trajectory to the space station.
During our approach, SpaceX flight controllers will work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to maneuver Dragon Freedom to the proper altitude. They will initialize the navigation sensors used for this methodical approach to the space station. They'll also activate and test out a number of systems on board Dragon, including the bidirectional communications system with the station using the C2V2 system. C2V2 stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles. It sets up a data stream from Dragon to the space station, giving us another path for Dragon telemetry to come to the ground, and giving an additional command capability to astronauts aboard the space station.
At approximately 1:01 p.m. Pacific time, the Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below the station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it's about a quarter mile, around 400 meters, directly below the station. Now, this maneuver also moves Dragon inside one of 2 checkpoints around the station that requires a set of go, no-go polls with the different control teams. The first checkpoint is called the approach ellipsoid, or you might hear us call it, or the crew call it, the AE. That's an imaginary shape measuring 4 kilometers by 2 by 2 kilometers. It's essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside the approach ellipsoid, the capsule is configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. That means that if Dragon lost all control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its trajectory would move it inside the approach ellipsoid.
The NASA and SpaceX teams will do a go, no-go poll to move Dragon inside the keep-out sphere, another checkpoint that consists of an imaginary sphere around the space station with a radius of 200 meters. Flight controllers use this to monitor all arriving and departing vehicles. This is another chance to confirm all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before moving closer to the station. It also carries a similar requirement on orbital trajectory. If Dragon were to somehow lose control of its thrusters, and the space station would be safe for 4 orbits, or about 6 hours, rather than the 24 hours required to enter the approach ellipsoid. Once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below the station, it will be at what's known at waypoint 0. That will be our first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold here at 400 meters if needed, but if all of the systems check out, Dragon can continue its approach to waypoint 1.
Dragon's move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, arriving at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it'll be on what we call the docking axis. That essentially means it's directly in front of the docking port. Crew-9 today is headed to the forwardmost port on station, so known as Node 2 forward. Dragon has docked to Node 2, also known as Harmony, for all of our crewed missions so far, because that's where both international docking adapters are located, installed for these new commercial spacecraft flights, as well as any other future spacecraft that use the international docking standard.
Once Dragon is just 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the International Docking Adapter. We may hear the call-out CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands-Off Point, a little less than 30 seconds before docking. At that point, any aborts will have to be done automatically by Dragon.
And of course, the grand arrival today is when our crew arrives at the space station. Dragon will fly in and make contact with the International Docking Adapter, or the IDA, and that gives us what we call soft capture. The soft capture ring will then retract until sensors indicate it's time for 12 hooks to drive in place and give us a hard capture, and for firmly secure Dragon to its new home on the space station. Now, the station crew, namely Jeanette Epps and the NASA astronaut, will manually pressurize the vehicle, or the vestibule, and that's the area between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch. Meanwhile, the umbilicals that provide power, audio, and data connections from the station to Dragon are put in place. And then it'll be time for leak checks and hatch opening, which is currently timelined to come a little more than 2 hours following docking. So it sounds like we are on target today for a docking around 4:30 p.m. Central, so 2:30 p.m. Pacific time.
Everything looking great from mission.